Welcome to me, where suspenseful, thrilling, and mysterious stories will draw you into a world where the lines between reality and fantasy seem to blur. When the night falls, when all the sounds gradually quiet down, leaving only your own heartbeat and breathing, that's when these stories begin. Tensions, unsolved mysteries, moments that will make you hold your breath in fear or curiosity, all are waiting for you ahead. Find a comfortable seat, dim the lights, and let this sound guide you on a journey that is not for the faint of heart. I want each of you to leave a comment sharing where you are in the world. And if you are enjoying the episodes, don't forget to give a like and subscribe to the channel now. Relax. Are you ready? If so, join me in the first story right now. Master of Puppets. Io sono il padrone, e tu sei il burattino. I am the master, and you are the puppet. Working in an antique store was hardly where Aislinn saw herself 5 years ago. But beggars couldn't be choosers in this economy. Her dreams of becoming someone had been crushed by the reality of life and the collapse of her support system after college, and she depended on this job to make ends meet. Still, something was charming about the Raven's wares, even if she did encounter some characters from time to time. Her cousin often asked her if she had ever felt spirits or weird energy working around the real skulls, the old Victorian dolls, or the taxidermy of the Raven that gave the store its name. Like everyone in the town, Aislinn had heard horror stories about the objects sold from this place. A man bought a doll for his daughter, and they all vanished without a trace a week later. A woman bought a pretty ring and died in a freak accident with the ring on her finger. Someone bought an old statue and fell down their stairs. The truth was, Aislinn didn't believe in those sorts of things. Ghosts, ghouls, or energies. Sure, the place was creepy if you worked late alone on long winter nights, but it paid the bills. Those horror stories were coincidences. Plenty of people had purchased items from the Raven's wrath without an issue. Her cousin believed in that side of things so strongly. People whispered about her behind their hands. If Aislinn started believing, what would they say about their family? It was bad enough she worked here. The customers you never heard about were outsiders. A tiny voice in her head would whisper when she had this argument with herself. You've never followed up to check on what happened afterwards. She looked up from her phone when Eli barged their way back through the piles of antique junk piled around the place. A guy dropped off this painting today. I'm telling you, it's weird. Aislinn knew that everything here was weird in one form or another. She once had someone try to offer a jar of real human teeth. That had been on her second day, and regrettably, it had not been her last strange experience. They jerked their thumb over their shoulder. It's out the back by the rocking horse. I need you to label it up before you leave tonight. Did he give any details? Nah, I'm surprised you didn't see him. Dark-haired guy, glasses, had some sort of accent. She vaguely recalled someone coming in of that description when she'd been restocking some old hardbacks and had directed him towards Eli at the back of the store. She wouldn't have thought of him again, save for the odd look in his dark eyes. I sent him to the back to see you. He had this look in his eyes, like he'd seen things, you know? I offered him a fair price, but he didn't even want the money. He just said to take it. He didn't want money? Aislinn repeated slowly. That's a bit weird, don't you think? Maybe it came with bad memories or something. Eli shrugged. Just make sure to get it cataloged to go out on display. I've got to head off. I'll see you tomorrow. The afternoon was quickly fading, the air becoming colder and far less welcoming inside. The eyes of the raven on the desk seemed to watch her every move, and the gentle ticking of the antique clocks suddenly felt ominous. Even the shadows of the shelves seemed to be lengthening, reaching out in her direction. Aislinn looked up from her book and paused. The store had fallen eerily silent. She felt her heartbeat increase as the hair at the back of her neck stood up. Hello? Why was she calling out? There was no one there. No one had entered the shop. The bell above the door had been silent for hours. A faint whisper seemed to be coming from the distance. Someone must have left the radio on in the storage room. She walked to the back of the store, trying to ignore the feeling that the eyes of the dolls were watching her. It wasn't like her to be this paranoid. She pushed the door open wide and reached in to grab the portable radio the manager insisted on keeping around. Her hand found the handle and lifted it out. It was switched off. Okay, she muttered, feeling a cold trickle of sweat run down her back. She set the radio down on an empty stool and worked away around the mountains of antiques to find the latest addition to the collection. Aislinn pulled the sheet off slowly and recoiled. The painting was of a hanging puppet, clearly based on the original Pinocchio story. It's dressed in traditional clothes against a gruesome backdrop of bones and the occasional skull. The entire thing was bordered by a swirling wine-red, blood red. A shudder ran down her spine as she took in all the gruesome details. The glass on the front was cracked, but that was hardly anything they couldn't fix. There was something odd about the break, something she couldn't quite put her finger on. She turned the painting over to check the back of the frame and noticed a faded name on the back, too illegible to read, and an unmistakable bloody handprint. What the hell? The painting clattered to the floor as she reeled back, banging into a cabinet and screaming as the puppet hanging there swung into her face. Its painted smile seemed twisted into a cruel leer as she swatted it away, clutching at her chest. She took some calming breaths. She picked the painting up from the floor with shaking hands and turned it over, aware of her heart racing in her chest. There's no bloody handprint, only the faded marks of a name. You're going mad, she muttered to herself. You need to get out more. She carried the painting to the desk and started cataloging it, intrigued by the lack of an artist's mark. Even a quick Google search yielded no results, and after a few minutes, she brought it back to sit at the back by the dolls and puppets. She took a moment longer to stare at it, and turned back to the front. There was a rocking horse in the middle of the aisle. No, that wasn't possible. She hadn't moved anything. Hello? She called out nervously. This isn't funny now. Come out. When no one answered, she tried to focus. Maybe it had been there before, and she had simply walked past it, not noticing. Eli had said the painting was out the back by the rocking horse. For a moment, her cousin's voice echoed in her ear. Though she tried to deny it, this was not the first time something like this had happened on her shift. Eli had laughed it off with her at the time, but she hadn't seen a bloody handprint last time. Eli had moved the horse. That's all there was to it. Aishlin walked back to the front of the store and stared out at the street, across at the ordinary sight of the small local shop and the dress shop beside it. Maybe she needed a holiday. The radio started playing a Cure song. Had she turned it on? When had she brought it to the front? Suddenly, the dark shop seemed alien to her. No, now she was being stupid. She didn't believe in any of that stuff. A sudden tiredness overcame her as she sat back in her chair and started to doze, watching the cuckoo bird on the antique clock swing backwards and forwards, swinging. She could hear the distant creaking sound of a rope and sobbing cries, growing louder and louder. Oh, how painful! How painful! Why wasn't I good? Something was hovering in the corner of her vision. Every instinct in her body screamed at her not to turn and look, to run away from that shadow. She turned her head and saw the puppet from the painting. It raised its head and leered at her. Puppets have no soul, but they do a lot of harm. Suddenly, she was the one battling with the rope as the puppet laughed and screeched over and over. I want to be real. I want to be real. I want to be real. Aishlin leapt up from her sleep, feeling the phantom rope around her throat. Every item in the shop was facing her. They seemed to be looming towards her, skulls echoing the cries of the horrific voice as it cried out over and over. Whatever sick joke this was, she wasn't playing anymore. She ran to the door and tried to haul it open. It was locked. The room seemed to darken, and the sound of the puppet's voice, distant at first, became unmistakable, growing clearer with each passing second. Its whispers now unmistakably directed at her. Oh, che mal. She picked up a metal poker and walked to where the painting sat. The voice was louder now, its desperate cries in both English and Italian piercing her ears. What the hell are you? The voices paused. You should let me out. You're just like me. You're a puppet too. Aishlin lifted the metal poker above her head. What are you? You should let me out, Aishlin. She tried to move away, but her back smacked into a large cabinet. What the hell are you? My last puppet didn't obey. He brought me here. Un burattino che non obbedisce. finisce sempre male. A puppet who does not obey always ends badly. You should let me out. I've always been here, waiting for someone to let me out. She realized then. What was wrong with the glass? Someone, something, was trying to break free from the inside. Her own reflection in the glass warped into a puppet's face, and she felt the weight of something choking her. No, she was not a puppet. She was a human. This wasn't real. I am the master of puppets. Puppets have no soul, but they do a lot of harm. I tried to take his soul, but he broke free. You will let me out. You are my puppet now. You saw it in the glass. You're like me. Iceland watched in horror as the cracks in the glass grew wider. It will end badly for you if you do not obey. She lifted the poker to swing it, and the hands of the puppets on display reached out and grabbed her throat, pulling her backwards. A bad puppet is of no use to me. I have been waiting for you. There's nothing to be done. One must really die good. Iceland screamed, trying to throw the puppets off. She twisted in their grip, seeing the cracks grow wider and wider. When you're not real, nothing hurts, Iceland. But the more I try to be real, the more I feel pain. Oh, the pain. How painful this is. Can't you feel it? The creaking of the rope was unbearable. The spiraling voice wailing and wailing as she begged for this to stop, for her to wake up, to let this nightmare end. Iceland woke in her chair. The clock read the same time as it had before, but something was different. Everything was different. At some point, the gentle light of the afternoon had faded into a gray gloom bordering on darkness. This day seemed to be lasting an eternity. It was all a nightmare, a terrible nightmare. She saw it then. Her vision narrowed, and her chest tightened as she stared at it. The painting, mocking her from the back, as it always had. Maybe this was still a nightmare taken new form. Those horrible skulls leering at her, that noise, that endless noise. She approached it slowly and ran her hands over the cracks in the glass, feeling her skin crawl with revulsion. The glass was cold, unnaturally cold, like it was sucking the little warmth she had left from her fingers. I want to be real, Aislinn. A voice whispered in her ear, you should let me out. I have waited so long. She grabbed the poker from where it lay on the ground and lifted it, bringing it down to strike the glass. A gloved hand reached out of the frame and snatched hold of her wrist, forcing her to drop the poker in shock. A puppet has no soul, but it can do harm. It cackled, drawing her closer to the frame. You're my puppet now. Your soul is mine. No! She screamed, grabbing at the nearest object, a porcelain bird, and throwing it at the puppet. You aren't real. None of this is real. She felt the world begin to blur and tried to pull away from its grip. But it was too late. This couldn't be it. This couldn't be how this ended for her. This wasn't fair. This wasn't fair. You aren't real, she cried as her mind began to break. You aren't real. She felt the rancid breath of the puppet as it whispered in her ear. And now neither are you. Little Men, January 1985. Somewhere over the... You were 1,000 miles into the Atlantic when the aircraft rutted violently against your controls. Barely a shiver in the airframe at first, like a deep sigh running through the metal bones of the 777, then unloading at once. You felt it beneath your hands, fingers curled around the yoke, a pulse of tension radiating from your own chest. And you thought that perhaps the bottom of the ocean was where you belonged. There was a darkness there, a pressure so strong it would stop your body from behaving like a biological machine and turn it into a mangled physics experiment. The same coexisted inside you, where your heart was splintered, half of it belonging to your mother and half of it to Cammy. A darkness you couldn't smooth away. Somewhere back there, among the rows of passengers dozing, sighing, and flipping through their lives, he was sitting. Your father, a man you'd never truly seen. Not beyond the stories your mother whispered in moments of quiet fury. A man who had given you nothing but a sickness that curled in your gut when you remembered where you came from. The man whose rage marked you. You didn't know his seat number, didn't want to know. The knowledge that he existed in your cabin, breathing your air, was enough to make a grown man sick. And you thought you knew that if he walked up to the cockpit door, if he knocked, if he leaned in with some pathetic excuse or a father's smirk, you would open the door and wrap your hands around his throat. You'd feel his pulse flutter against your fingers, fragile and real, and you would squeeze. You let autopilot hold the course. Let the gentle hum of the engines seep into your bones, pretending for a moment you were something better than what he left behind. A clean slate, but there was always a stain, that borrowed darkness, his gift to you. No matter how high you flew, you couldn't outrun it. And then she drifted into your mind, the girl with eyes like sky break, a voice like gentle rain, the girl you had never touched, could never touch, because she was flawless in ways you would never be. She'd smile at you with that easy grace, unaware of the shadows clawing inside you, oblivious to the storm you kept locked behind your ribs. You thought of her seeing you for what you were, the quiet, steady pilot with a monster curled around his heart. If she knew, if she saw even a hint of that darkness, she would recoil. She'd wish you out of the sky, wish your plane would disappear into the ocean without a trace. And maybe she'd be right. The horizon stretched before you. A line you couldn't cross. A future you didn't deserve. You swallowed the air in shallow breaths, felt the press of your father's existence. Outside, the clouds thickened, gray swirling into black, and the gentle tremor of turbulence returned. The seatbelt sign blinked on. You flicked the intercom switch, cleared your throat. Ladies and gentlemen, we're passing through some rough air. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. Your father's life was in your hands. All their lives were. You looked at the yoke, the screens, the clouds ahead, and wondered just how far you could fall before the darkness took over. Why was he still alive? How did he deserve to be alive? On what grounds exactly? You could push the controls forward, put the nose into a dive, select full thrust, increase bank angle to 45 degrees, and stall the plane. Keep putting in fatal commands while your FO tries to right the plane until the dual input sound warning starts to ring out through the cockpit. You squeezed your eyes shut just for a moment. The stick trembled beneath your fingers, the aircraft groaning. You loved this plane, and like in any other reciprocal relationship, it not only loved you back, but supported your every decision. You could do it. A simple motion, a nudge of the yoke, the push of a throttle, and gravity would take over. You opened your eyes. Outside, the storm coiled tighter, wind shear slipping along the fuselage. The intercom crackled as your first officer, blissfully unaware of the war inside you, mumbled something about altitude adjustments. You barely heard him. A breath, another. Then the master caution blared. A harsh, shrieking thing. Your FO jerked upright. Jesus, what? Your hands moved. Instincts taking over before your mind could finish what it started. The turbulence sharpened. Wind punched the aircraft broadside. The nose dipped. Pitch up, you corrected without thinking. Muscle memory overriding the dark pull at the edge of your mind. The aircraft stabilized, shuddering in the air, and for a moment, all was still. Your FO exhaled, dragging a hand down his face. That was a bad one. You okay? You nodded, throat dry. Yeah, you said, because it wasn't your hands that tried to kill them. It was the storm. At least, that was the lie you would tell yourself. Something in you had hesitated, had listened to the alarms, had heard the raw panic in your FO's voice, had responded like the pilot they had trained you to be. Why had you stopped? Captain, you forced your expression into something normal, professional. The storm was beginning to ease, the worst of it passing. We'll be clear in a few minutes, you said. Keep an eye on the readings. He nodded, rubbing his temples. Didn't think we'd get rocked that hard. Thought for a second we were gonna. He shook his head. Never mind. You didn't respond. Instead, you reached for the intercom. Your voice was calm, steady, everything it should be. Ladies and gentlemen, the turbulence is subsiding. We'll have a smooth ride the rest of the way. Thank you for your patience. You let go of the button. The lie sat heavy in your mouth because the storm wasn't over. It had only just begun. There's a grizzly on the plane. People are shuffling down the aisle of the plane, scooting one step at a time, shoving things in the overhead compartment, elbowing and kneeing each other as they throw themselves down into their seats. The flight attendants are smiling brightly and saying, "Good morning, good morning, good morning," to each passenger in turn as they enter the plane. The captain is there with them. I take a good look at him. I know this guy. Kind of a wimp. That's why I knew this was the right flight. I think his name is Cameron. When I press the barrel of this gun against his head, he'll do anything I say. One man with a gun can do anything. I give him a little wink. I'll see you soon. It's easy to get around airport security when you work at an airport. This is gonna be my final flight. And the final flight for all these people too. I'm not gonna shoot them all. Maybe just a few. Might as well. But most of them are going out with a real bang. Not me though. Gonna shoot myself right before we crash. My seat is 32 of, so here we go. Almost there. And I stop. I see it, but I can't. There. There's... What? No. Yes. There's a goddamn grizzly bear sitting in a seat. Buckled in. A woman sitting next to him is feeding him pink bits of something from a bowl. The bear is huge, but somehow fits in the seat like it was custom made. It's sitting straight up in the seat, buckled in. How? What? The woman caught me staring. Ooh, sorry. He doesn't like to be stared at. The bear is staring at me with deep brown eyes, dark brown fur, huge paws, long claws. It starts snorting and moaning, and I shake my head and keep walking to my seat. I look around, and everyone else seems to be fine with this. How did I not see the bear walk onto the plane? Why is no one else freaking out about this? I find 32F, and I look back to the bear, who's a few rows ahead. The bear turns its head and looks back at me. I turn my head away and drop down into my seat. The bear turned around, and the woman next to it gave it another morsel. A man sits down next to me and says, "Hello there. Do you see that?" I said. "Oh yeah, we've got a full plane today. That's good luck, you know." "No, not that. I point. "What?" "The bear," I said, so loud that a few people turned around and looked at me. "Oh yeah, he's a cute guy, isn't he?" "That's insane," I tried whispering, but I know everyone heard me. Shouldn't be a problem. The guy sits down and starts looking at his phone. just like that. I look around and see others doing the same. I see people reading books, eating snacks, whatever. Nobody is freaking out over the goddamn grizzly bear sitting in 25B. "Sir, I'll need to place your bag in the overhead compartment," says a flight attendant. "No, this is my carry-on. My gun is in here. Sorry, sir, but new safety procedures say we need all bags placed in the overhead bin for takeoff. Once we reach cruising altitude, you can get your bag." She reaches over to take my bag from my lap, but I hold on to it. "Sir, please," she says with a firm pull. I pull back. She's not letting go. We're having a small tug of war over my neighbor's lap. "Let her have the bag, just doing her job," says my nonchalant neighbor. I let go, and she opened the compartment over my seat. "Oh, we're all full here. Let's see." She's opening compartments down the line, away from me. "Here we are. Sir, I'm placing your bag right here, right above the bear." How did the bear get on here? How did it fit on the plane? Why does the bear have an aisle seat? Why is there a bear on the plane? Why is no one freaking out? She shuts the compartment and walks towards the front of the plane. "We'll be taking off soon. You look nervous, son. Is this your first flight?" asks the man next to me. "No, I've flown lots of times." This was supposed to be the last time. The attendants are doing their usual pre-flight routine of instructing people how to put their seatbelts together and how to put on the emergency oxygen masks. I guess the bear doesn't need any help. Its caretaker is sitting right next to it. The seatbelt fits, so I guess they have a special bear mask too. Wouldn't want the wild animal to get hurt, now would we? Focus. It's just an animal, after all. It'll be the first thing I shoot. I've got a machine gun, so I'll just spray it with a dozen bullets or so. That should keep the rest of the idiots in their seats. Then I'm back in charge. Bear looks calm anyway. Shouldn't be hard. Today is my day. Nothing is going to change this. The pilot tells us on the overhead that we're ready for takeoff. The bear made a low growl, and the woman next to it scratched behind his ears, soothing it. The plane starts moving down the runway. Normally, this part of flying doesn't bother me, but today, I'm gripping my armrests. The acceleration picks up, and the plane's engines get louder. I'm staring at the back of the bear's head, which is completely still, like some damn taxidermy project that had its own ticket. The wheels of the plane leave the ground, and we are in the air. I'm in a window seat, so I turn my head to look out, hoping it will calm me down, knowing that all is going according to plan, except for the bear. All I have to do is get the bag, kill the bear, shoot that bitch that brought him on here too. Maybe a few more people, just for fun. Then up to the cockpit with a hostage on the bad end of the barrel to make my way in. I'll tell the captain that we're making an unexpected detour right into the middle of the nearest city. Right before we crash, I'll shoot myself. We have to wait before we reach cruising altitude. Then I can move about freely. Then we'll have about 30 to 40 minutes before we get close to the nearest big city. Enough time to feel like God before dying. I'm watching through the window, still gripping the armrests. "Looks like you need a drink of water," says the man next to me. I realize my forehead is covered with sweat. "Yeah, I guess I could," I say, wiping my forehead. I look back and see that the goddamn bear is reclining in its seat. The person behind it doesn't seem to mind. Just then, the bear turned around and looked at me. I turned back to the window. Even over the sound of the plane's engines, I can hear the bear smacking its lips, followed by another low rumbling growl, almost like it's annoyed by me. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to fuck up your day. I must have gotten lost in the window." As the next time I looked up, the snack cart was being pushed down the aisle by an attendant. What's the bear gonna have? A cookie? Water? Or Coke? When that cart gets behind me, I'm gonna get up and get over there and grab my bag. I'll take a can of Coke when she gets here. Now she's asking the woman next to the bear if she'll have anything. The woman takes a cookie and a cup of water. The bear got nothing. I guess it's full. Come on, hurry up. She's taking her sweet time, pushing that cart down the aisle. My jaw is clenched tight, like a bear trap. All right, here she is. Finally. "Would you like anything, sir?" she asks the man next to me. "Yes, a water for myself and for my friend here." "No, thank you. I'll have a Coke." "Oh, nonsense. You sweating like that? You need a water. 2 waters, please." The woman poured 2 waters, and I gulped mine down in one drink before she even left. "Would you like another?" she asks. "No, I want a Coke." She hands me the red can, and I chug half of it. The sugar and caffeine hit my brain like ice water. I put the can down, and the bear is staring at me again. The attendant pushes the cart down to the row behind us. It's time now. The bear is still looking back at me. I'll give it a minute, finish my drink. "You know, I had a bear like that when I was younger," said the man next to me. "What?" "Oh yeah, his name was Popper. Great bear. You ever had a bear?" "No, I fucking haven't. I'm gonna kill this son of a bitch too." Right after the bear. The bear is still staring at me. And now I'm staring back. I finish my can of Coke and crunch it in my hand. I'm in control here. It's time. Now. Right now. Let's go. I unbuckle my seatbelt and stumble across my neighbor's knees, almost falling into the opposite row. A lot of people notice and are now watching me, but the bear is now looking straight ahead, unaware of me. I think it's cool. Just a few steps, open the compartment, and start blasting. This is my day, and nothing is going to screw it up. The aisle seems a mile long, and it's taking all my willpower to pick up my feet for every step. I make it to the compartment, the bear sitting right next to me. I reach up to open the hatch, and "Excuse me," says the woman with the bear. "Could you hand me my bag? It's in there. I need something from it." "Is it for the bear?" I ask. I didn't mean to, but it slipped. "No, it's just a book for me to read. I can smell the bear. Deep pine woods. Its huge paw is brushing against my leg. It's just the fur touching me, but I see the long claws. I open the compartment, and there's my bag, right in front of hers. One quick draw, and I could shoot the bear. Just unload the whole fucking clip into him and forget the rest. Make my way to the cockpit, and the bear's huge paw falls from the armrest, and the claws scrape my leg. I fall back into someone's lap, with my heart in my throat. I look at the bear, and it's still in its seat, eyes closed, breathing deep. That low rumble, which is louder than the engines. "Oh, sorry about that. He's just sleeping." "Sir, excuse me," says the flight attendant with the cart. She's finished handing out cookies and Cokes, and now wants to go back to the front. With the look on her face, I believe she would run me over if she could. She grabbed the lady's bag and handed it to her and closed the compartment. "I need something out of there," I say. "Yes, sir. She stops and nearly falls over her cart as the plane has hit sudden turbulence. I bump into the person sitting behind me, opposite the compartment. "Sir, get back to your seat." "I just need..." "Sir, you need to get back to your seat." The plane bumps and shakes, and now the bear is awake and growling. The woman hands him some pink bit out of a container, which I can now see is fish. Salmon. The bear snacks and smacks, but still makes that growling sound, making an awful mixture of sounds. The attendant has pulled the cart backwards down the aisle, leaving me an open path to my seat. The bear looks at me with salmon hanging from its jaws, so I crawl and stumble back to my seat. "Buckle up. It's a bumpy ride," says the idiot sitting next to me. I'm going to kill the bear, then him, then the attendant, then the woman. I buckle my belt, and still my head slams into the window. People are screaming. Kids are crying. The plane is bumping and rattling. The captain's voice comes over the speaker, saying, "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain in your seats. We are experiencing extreme turbulence." The bear is growling and tossing in its seat. The woman tries to feed it more salmon, but the bear isn't having it. He swats away her hand with a huge paw, and the pink salmon goes flying across the plane. The bear tosses and turns and rumbles harder than the plane and breaks free. The goddamn thing has gotten out of its chair. I have to go now. I unbuckle my seatbelt, and the moron next to me says, "You don't want to do that, son." I punch him in the mouth, just so I know I got him one good time before this is over. I'll take this bear down with the rest of them. I brace myself against the seats, and I take small steps with firm feet and make my way to the compartment. The bear is squeezed in the aisle on all fours, bouncing off the seats, but mostly steady, facing away from me. Good. Almost there. I grab the seat it used to sit in, and I open the compartment. I unzip my bag, and I see the machine gun. It's already loaded. All I have to do is grab it and open fire. Never killed an animal before. It's kinda like a bonus. The plane has settled. No more turbulence. Everything is still and smooth, and I hear the bear make a noise. I turn to see it facing me. On all fours, it's half as tall as me. Oh my, thank you, thank you. Please, help him to his seat, says the woman. He just loses his temper when there's turbulence. I look back to the bear, who's looking at me with deep brown eyes. Just take his paw and help him to his seat. I'd help you, but I hurt my ankle in all the trouble. Just take his paw. I don't know why, but I stick out my hand. The bear puts its paw out and softly lights on my palm. It makes some kind of noise that I can't figure out if it's aggressive or friendly. I slowly back up, keeping my eyes on the bear as it walks towards its seat. The bear sits down, and she buckles him in, and the whole plane starts clapping. They're saying, "Aw," and "How sweet," and whatever else. Are you fucking kidding me? The captain's voice over the speaker says, "Ladies and gentlemen, we seem to be in the clear now, but I am asking that you remain in your seats for the remainder of the flight." Thank you, sir. That goddamn attendant again. She appeared like a fucking ghost. Please return to your seat. I'm so goddamn flabbergasted. I don't know what to do. Just whatever. I shut the compartment. I take my seat. The guy sitting next to me is holding his mouth, but pulls his hand down to say, "Good job back there. I forgive you for socking me. We all get a little emotional sometimes under pressure. It takes a brave man to do what you did, risking yourself for that poor animal. I'm sure he appreciates you. I don't know what to say to that." I look out the window and see the big city, so small way down below us. I watch as clouds fill the window and blot out the city with pure white. I look back at the bear, who's looking back at me. I stayed in my seat for the rest of the flight, grabbed my bag, and deboarded the plane. Not one bullet fired. In flight. Meal. Leo was not a fan of flying. Not like this. sitting quietly with strangers in an enclosed space, like he was back in the classroom. That was one of his ideas of hell. He had many ideas of hell, and very few of heaven. He made sure her was one of the first passengers on the plane. He took his seat with no fuss and no nonsense, and then did his best to weather the storm of humanity around him. He tried the breathing technique his therapist had taught him, and he also tried zoning out. Neither worked. A voice in his head was screaming at him to leave. Anything was better than this. Screw the deal. Just get off the plane and go home. Maybe Jimmy was right. They should buy the Vibe Bar, change its name to something far cooler, and live the simple life. Leo's Bar. Thoughts of the bar helped calm him for a little while, but then he realized that his ambition was taking the concept to places that were far from simple. Leo sighed. Jimmy would make that bar work. He really would. But then Leo would come along, interfere, and fuck it up. And the worst of it was that Jimmy would smile sweetly and let him ruin everything. Sometimes Leo wondered whether he wasn't wired right, that maybe he'd been dropped on his head as a baby, or his mother had had a secret drug habit. Leo was never settled or content. Nothing was ever good enough. Or if it seemed like it was, it soon turned into the brown stuff and stunk to high heaven, meaning Leo had to move onto pastures new before the shit stuck to him, and he was the one stinking the place up. Somehow, he lost himself somewhere in his thoughts and self-absorption, thankful of the respite. Barely taking in the safety briefing, he came to himself as the plane accelerated down the runway, and he was pressed down into his seat as they traveled skyward. He enjoyed this bit, but it also terrified him. There was nothing natural about being propelled into the sky. He tried not to consider the landing. It was the landing that could kill you. Hit the ground hard enough, and it was all over. He blew out a breath and closed his eyes. He kept them closed as he mulled the deal. This was the big time. Once he'd done this deal, he'd be a different animal, and the Vibe Bar would be far beneath him. He was a player now. Things were on the change, and people better take note. They would have to take note. He'd make sure of it. "Drink, sir?" The question fazed him, but he quickly returned to himself, ordering a bourbon, then making it a double. As he poured his drink into the crappy plastic cup, he tuned into the interaction between the air hostess and the passenger sat next to him. The voice was what caught his attention. There was no mistaking the owner of that voice. If Leo were to turn and gawp at the woman next to him, he knew that he would find her attractive. Maybe too attractive. Leo's measure of too attractive was not misogynistic. He applied the same rule to man and beast alike. Beautiful people could be really up themselves and manage to be a pain in the ass at the same time. Leo had experienced this and had no time for it. Mostly, he had no time for it. There was always room for exceptions, and she turned out to be yet another of the exceptions. "Hey," he said, as he turned to greet her. "I'm Leo." She smiled and nodded. "I'm Grace. Nice name," he told her. And for once, he thought he might mean it. There followed a silence that could have been awkward, but instead was filled with anticipation, or at least was as far as Leo was concerned. "I don't usually," he began, but trailed off as both the words and the sentiment felt off kilter. "I bet that's what you say to all the girls you sit next to on a plane," she said, with a hint of humor in her voice. That voice, there was something cathartic about it. Not only that, her very presence was doing something to him. Some things. He was regressing. A young boy around the babysitter. A pretender to a throne he never thought he would ever sit on. His body was fizzing, and his brain was spinning, so that he couldn't think straight. "So Leo," she said, "what is it that you do?" That last word was heavy with meaning, but he could not discern it. "I'm a businessman," he replied. "The problem with the dog-eat-dog world of business is you have to piss a few people to get anywhere. Am I right?" She was smiling. He nodded. "Seemed impossible not to. Trick is not to piss the wrong people off," she said in a quieter tone. Leo paused for a moment, his face a question. It were almost as though she knew something that he didn't. But how could she? She was just a stranger on a plane, and this was small talk to pass the time as they lingered in the limbo of this uncomfortable travel. Then she casually placed her hand on his thigh, and everything took a sharp right turn. "I find flying so dull." Now she was barely whispering. "Don't you?" "Not so much so now," Leo replied. Grace grinned at him. There was something overtly sexy about that grin. It sent a thrill up Leo's spine. The sensation was heightened as Grace's hand stroked higher up his thigh, and he found himself wanting more, wanting so much more. "Your business?" she asked, her voice stroking the back of his neck in time with her hand on his thigh. "Is it dangerous?" "Very." His own voice felt thick and stilted. He was inexplicably drowsy, but his senses felt heightened. Her touch was electrifying him. "I walk on the wild side." He wasn't sure why he'd told her that. Wild side? They weren't even his own worlds. "I knew it!" she said excitedly, her hand going all the way up his inner thigh and resting exactly where he had hoped it might. "You're a very naughty man, aren't you?" Naughty? Was he? If anyone else had asked him this question, he'd have put them in their place. But with her, it was different. It was like she was royalty, a bona fide princess, the sort you couldn't refuse. And he wasn't going to refuse her when she was working magic on him with that hand of hers. Couldn't react badly with where her hand was right now. I have been known to be naughty. He struggled to say the words as an involuntary gasp threatened to intermingle with them. In that case, I think you better ask for a blanket. Grace gave him a playful squeeze. She was leaning in towards Leo now. He felt her breath on his earlobe and neck. Sure, he said, and duly obliged. That's better, purred Grace as she spread the blanket over Leo. The armrest was up and out of the way now. This business of yours, it's criminal, isn't it? Can be, Leo replied, as Grace moved closer to him and nuzzled his neck, sending waves of pleasure through him. The anticipation was building, and he was reeling from this turn of events. He was no longer enduring a painful flight. He was enjoying a mile-high tryst. Oh, look, you're bleeding. Her words took too long to sink in. He responded instead to her hand, leaving him and taking his wrist instead. There was a smear of blood, but he hadn't noticed any pain or act that could have caused the slight wound. Here, let me. He watched as she lapped at the bloodied skin on his wrist. However slow he'd been with what she'd been saying, his body responded quickly and fully to this. She was sending waves of pleasure through him, and his imagination was going to the best of places, even before she began kissing and then sucking at his flesh. He'd never known pleasure like it, never realized how sensitive his wrists were. They sat like that for a while, Grace lapping and kissing him as he looked on, Leo doing his best to stifle his moans and hold himself back. The way he was responding to her, it was like his first time, but he had decades of experience to bring to the party. Something so simple as kissing his wrist. Who knew? And if she could have this effect on him as she did this, what further pleasures awaited? He was disappointed when she stopped, resisting the urge to ask her not to cease, putting a hold on begging her for more. Instead, he went for small talk to disguise his blatant need for her. What do you do, Grace? He asked, as she slipped her arm around him and drew closer to him. Her hand was wrapped around him now. It felt so good. He barely registered her having undone his belt and trousers, losing his touch, drowning out the dissenting thoughts, going with it. He'd seen plenty of action before today, but not like this, not with a woman like Grace. And she was doing things to him that he didn't know were possible. He wanted her more than any woman he'd ever met, wanted to give himself over to the pleasure he knew she could so readily bestow. Her voice, her presence, it had spoken of this, drawn him in, Now she was fulfilling the promise that was made as soon as they'd taken their seats on this flight. A chance encounter that was blowing his mind to pieces as she stroked him and pleasured him. She answered his question with that voice of hers. I deal with the naughty boys. I eliminate risks, she breathed into his ear. And you've been a very naughty boy. Fran Johnstone is not happy with you going behind his back with this deal of yours. His eyes widened in shock, but he barely had time to let the words sink in before her teeth sank into his neck. His back arched, and he wanted to protest, to struggle, but it was already too late for that. Too late for Leo. Grace took her time and enjoyed her in-flight well. These business trips were very lucrative for an assassin with her skills and proclivities. Less so for loose cannons like Leo. The midnight ride. It was a dark night, one of those without any stars to look at, and a dark moon. Not even the universe was interested in what was about to happen. There was no spotlight over me, nor a guiding light to help me escape. As I ran to my car, one of my heels broke, and I twisted my ankle. I took out the shoes and limped to the door while looking for the keys in my purse. Damn big fancy bags. This whole scenario would have been much easier with jeans and sneakers. But that was not something I could change, and dreaming about better times would not help me either. My hands were trembling, and I was about to empty the bag when I touched the furry pom-pom I had attached to my keychain days before. I took out the keys, opened the door, and once I was inside, I locked the car. The street was empty. No one was screaming my name or running after me, and I took a deep breath before starting the motor. When I passed the campus gates, I felt light and smiled. I was free, and I felt happy. Before entering the highway, I stopped at the last traffic light and adjusted the mirror. I could not even remember the last time I touched it. And then, when I lowered it, I saw them smiling at me and waving. I tried to open the door. I wanted to jump out, but Amir moved his arm to my neck and pinned me to my seat. Ezra moved to the front slowly, while I struggled to move or breathe. Suddenly, everything hurt, and I did the only thing I could. I pushed the gas pedal with my foot, and my ankle cracked, making the pain even worse. Ezra took the wheel, while I tried to free myself from the strangling arm. But Amir whispered in my ear, "This will happen, whether you like it or not. I gave you the choice." His teeth sank into my neck, and as the pressure increased in my skin and the wound started to burn, I felt my life running away from me. The blood spilt over my white dress, forming stains that seemed broken rose petals. and shortly after, my head fell on Ezra's lap, and the car stopped in the middle of the highway. "Move her," said Amir. And Ezra grabbed my body and threw it to the back seat like I was weightless. Amir sat in the driver's seat, and once Ezra sat by his side, the car started again. I could barely breathe. The only thought in my mind was how much blood I had lost, and how much more was now running down the leather I was lying in. I had no more pain, but I was starting to feel cold. And although I wanted desperately to scream and cry, I just couldn't. He betrayed me, I thought. He's helping him. I heard the sound of the radio buzzing, and then the music. Sympathy for the devil. Really? I thought, and I felt like laughing, though I couldn't. Would he now take the end of his sleeves and take them out of his jacket? What would the 16-year-old me have done in this situation? I should have been given an option and not forced into this. The sun was rising when I woke up. Everything around me was flooded with orange light, and I felt the warmth as the first rays touched my skin. I did not want to open my eyes fully, but I understood I was not gone, at least not completely, which meant I still had the right to see the sun again. It burned at first, though. Everything hurt, but I did not mind. It was like something else was pushing for me, and my body did not belong to me anymore. I was still in the back of the car, and my dress and the seat were drenched in red. My blood. How had I lost so much blood? Why was I awake? I raised my head, and my neck cracked. I never liked that sound. But that day, it was scarier than ever. The light passing through the front window blinded me for a second. But when I got used to it, I saw someone sitting in the passenger seat. I opened my mouth, but the words did not come out. Ezra, I thought, convinced that I still had that power on me, that he would listen to my thoughts, that he would attend my command if Amir were far away from us. Ezra, please. But he did not turn. I moved my arm. I wanted to sit, but I couldn't. My limbs failed me, and the only thing I managed was to grab his arm and fall to the car floor. He moved then, but not the way I expected. I was still holding his sleeve when I saw the blood crossing his arm, the wound in his neck, and his eyes opened, lost, lifeless. Then someone opened the door, grabbed me by the ankles, and dragged me out of the car. I felt the pain once more, like someone was stabbing me with those expensive shoes I had bought weeks before. When my head hit the floor, I closed my eyes. I did not want to see what was about to happen. You complain too much, said Amir, though I knew I was the only one who could hear him. There he was, again, inside my head. You are such a romantic, he continued. He was not helpful, no matter how much you tried to make him. He was not worthy. He helped you, I thought. He was just a pretty puppet. And the puppets are good to play. I still had my eyes closed and felt a tear running down my face. He'll kill me. This all will pass, I thought. Don't be ridiculous, I heard. We have work to do. I don't like to waste talent, tama, or blood. You should know that about me already. After getting rid of Ezra, he lifted my body as if I were a little rag doll and sat me in the passenger seat. The leather was sticky and smelled funny, but sweet. You'll recover soon. Don't worry. You'll be buying new shoes in no time, he said, as he started the car and put on his sunglasses. The car moved away, and as the sunlight warmed my face, I knew I'd have to come up with a better plan to leave that life, that work, and that man. The road to nowhere. I yawned and rubbed the sleep away from my eyes, looking around. The flickering lights of the train windows I had gotten so used to were gone, and all I could see were the dim white lights that lined the aisle of the train car. I glanced around at all the empty seats, confused. Why was I here? Why was the train empty? And why wasn't it moving? Confusion overtook me, followed by panic. I shot to my feet and strode to the end of the train car, trying the door at the very end, but it wouldn't budge. I quickened my steps to the other side, my shoes clanking on the metal floor, and tried the sliding door. This one opened like a dream. Excitedly, I stepped out of the train car onto the solid ground I knew would be there, and promptly fell. There was no ground. There was no sky. There was just nothingness. My heart dropped into my stomach as I lurched downward, and the only thing that saved me from plummeting into that nothingness was the open backpack on my back, caught on the armrest of one of the chairs still inside. My arms, having felt like they were wrenched from my shoulders, hung there loosely as the straps of my backpack held on to me for dear life. My breath caught in my throat, and my mind raced as I stared out at the blackness before me. How do I get up? I tried to turn to grab the floor of the train car, but a loud tearing of fabric caused me to pause, and my heart thundered in my ears. I waited, my arms refusing to move out of fear. But in one fell swoop, I launched my hands up behind me and hoisted myself back onto the floor of the train car, just as my backpack completely tore open. Panting heavily, back in the safety of the train car, I ripped my backpack off my shoulders and inspected the damage. The top was completely torn, but I didn't care. That stupid backpack saved my life. I threw it back on and stood up, staring out at the blackness before me, holding on to the armrest of a chair just for insurance. There was literally nothing. No one. The silence was so suffocating, I almost wished to hear my heart pounding in my ears again. "Hello?" I called as loud as I could into the void. but there wasn't even an echo, just silence. Suddenly, as if compelled by some outside force, the train car lurched forward. I nearly tumbled into the void again, the only thing that saved me being that armrest I was holding. "What was that? Who's doing that?" I called, but once again, no answer. The train car chugged along slowly, almost at a snail's pace, but I figured that was better than nothing. I closed the sliding door, sick of my inability to stay firmly in the train, and walked carefully to a seat, plopping down into it. What was I doing before I got on the train? I didn't remember. Who was I? I didn't remember. It felt like I'd been created from air and dropped onto this God-forsaken train, surrounded by this God-forsaken nothing. I took the poor, shredded backpack off my shoulders again and searched through it this time, but all I found were some loose-leaf blank sheets of notebook paper. A student, maybe? If I was stupidly disorganized. I desperately tried to search my brain for any clues related to school. Maybe the name of a school I went to, the names of past teachers, the faces of fellow students and friends. I came up with nothing. No matter how much I tried to scour my memories, one unchangeable fact remained. I was stuck on a train car in the middle of the void, heading to nowhere. All I could do was wait, so that's what I did. I waited, and I waited, and waited. I kept myself occupied with my thoughts as I stared out the window, gazing into the darkness. I don't know how much time passed. I had nothing to gauge my bearings on. No watch, no ticking clock, nothing. The dim lights from the train ceiling flickered for a moment, and then went out with a quiet click. And at the same time, the train came to an abrupt halt. I looked away from the window and shot to my feet, wrenched away from my thoughts, and pressed myself against the train wall. I could barely see anything. The dim lights were the only light source in this never-ending blackness. "Hello?" I called out, but my voice broke in my nervousness. There was a small beep, like something about to be announced over an intercom. And all of a sudden, a digital message began scrolling across the top of the train wall in bright red digital letters. Suddenly, as if compelled by some outside force, the train car lurched forward. The train started moving again, abruptly, the force almost yanking me off my feet, and I steadied myself before looking back at the digital red letters. Who's doing this? Who is it? My frustration and stress exploded into my voice, and I stomped angrily away from the wall to stand in the center of the slow-moving train car, bathed by the weak red light of the letters. The digital message continued scrolling, and the letters would reveal a message that would make me rush towards the seats. The train started moving again abruptly, the force almost yanking me off my feet. I didn't catch the rest, desperate to get to a seat. The train did, in fact, start moving forward again. And it was only by the grace of God that I ended up grabbing the armrest of a seat to avoid flying to the floor. Angrily, I stormed to the end of the train and yanked open the sliding door, screaming into the void. "Are you messing with me? What are you trying to do? Why am I here?" I glanced back at the red letters on a whim and saw the following message. The silence was so suffocating, I almost wished to hear my heart pounding in my ears again. Nothing. Absolute silence. And the last thing I saw before tumbling out of the train and into the void were the small red letters forming the words, "There was no ground. There was no sky. Good luck. Keep going." Suddenly, I looked up. Was I asleep? Had I forgotten my flight? Everyone around me seemed nervous, or so it seemed to me. I immediately reached for my robotic purse. It's always a good thing to carry on such a journey. Its fingerprint scanner still worked. I looked across the way at the panini shop, at which point there was a thunderous roar in my belly. Suddenly, the sound of a plane landing. "Attention customers, flight boo, boo, boo to San Francisco, now boarding." Aha, I've caught you. I immediately grabbed at anything I could. Things that I was pretty sure were mine, or that would be nice to own in any case. As we all stumbled toward the flight gate with our boarding pass, it became obvious that we weren't all going to get the window seat in the cockpit. Someone was going to have to fly the plane. "You can handle this, young Hopite," I said to myself. "Remember your training, yon grasshopper." I walked up to the gate like a supermodel doing her taxes. It wasn't easy being this funky. The airport attendant shot me a glance as I approached, then looked back down at his screens. "My eyes are up here. Buddy, may I help you, miss?" "Yes. Well, I would like to get on the plane." "Which plane?" "That one. The one at the end of the gate." "There is no other plane." "Miss, you have to be specific. It's my first day on the job." I looked at him with a deep sense of pity, not wanting to shake anything up. He had the look of an Ohio school teacher who had gotten lost after an all-night kegger. I gingerly handed him my ticket. "Are you sure you're in the right airport?" "The right airport? Yes, yes, yes." "You're sure? Or yes, you're agreeing with me?" "Yes, I'm sure that I am agreeing with you." "Yes, this is the right airport. I'm sure of it. I majored in airports in college." "Okay, take your boarding pass over here and get on that plane over there if you need further instruction." Okay, I'm good. Let's go." I subsequently made it to the boarding window. "Miss Bakersfield," said the boarding attendant with the gigantic glasses. "Yes? You've been bumped up to first class. Jesus, couldn't have thought of a better ending than that." I kissed my ticket and pressed it to the sky, my bags and body armor hanging off me like the tattered rags of a battered Superman. "Where is first class? In the back?" I asked in pure euphoria. "On the plane." I got on the plane. And what did I see? First class was amazing. The people here were so jelly of my success that I could barely contain myself. I sat next to a young, old gentleman reading a financial newspaper. Soon enough, we went down the runway, and then we all collectively hopped into the air at once, hurling the 100-ton behemoth into space. As soon as we struck the atmosphere, I got chatty and looked to my left, only to find that the newspaper cemented to my compatriot's face had now been surgically removed. "Hello?" I said. "I'm Miss Bakersfield." "So they say." "So who says?" "I've got no time for questions. I'm a very busy man." "Busy doing what?" "Busy reading newspapers. You know that every time a newspaper is printed, a priest starves to death in Bangladesh? Is that in the Guinness Book? It should be." "Where are you going?" "Who said I need to be going anywhere?" "You're the one who's going away. Forgive my impetuosity. We are both hurtling through space at the speed of light. I figured you would be going somewhere. It's all in the mind." "Yes, sir. I agree. It truly is in the mind." "Do you buy timeshares?" "Sorry, I don't. I was asking because I wanted to buy one for myself." "Really? That's interesting." "Yes. I made my first $1,000 selling timeshares in old Italy. And then Jesus was crucified." He let out an uproarious laugh that could not be mistaken for sarcasm, traveling at this speed. "So," I said, not having understood my place in the scheme of life. "Nurse," he said. "I'm not a nurse," said the flight attendant as she walked by. "What can I get for you?" "Could you bring me my hunting knife?" "Yes, right away." "Hunting knife?" I said. "Yes," he said. "I like to flick my knife when I get nervous." The flight attendant went toward the cockpit and then knocked on the door, using a secret knock that only people with knives understood. Suddenly, the door opened, and there stood the co-pilot. He spoke with her a while, and then handed her what looked, from a distance, to be a small child wrapped in leather. As she dragged it back to where we were, I almost expected it to start singing its ABCs, until she walked over to me, lugged it over my lap, and handed it to the man who never went anywhere. He sat there with the small, sharp, metallic toddler in his hand, flicking the edge of the blade. Each flicking was a bullet to my eardrum, but I didn't say anything. I just looked at him. Thank God my purse was robotic. Or was it really? The man who never went anywhere flicked his blade a few more times. "Have you ever bought a hotel?" "I'm allergic." "I didn't say that. I said, did you ever buy a hotel?" "Well, I am in first class." Now that's a classy response. I like you. You seem to be so comfortable. Well, first class does that to a lady. We flew for hours. The man who went nowhere continually flicked his blade while I tried to figure out the lock on my robotic purse. As we flew, the sunlight of 1,000 dances went through the cockpit. We were free, nowhere to be found. "Timothy, sit down and shut up. Don't make me tell you again." "But Dad, I want to see how far I can jump." "Sit down." "But Dad..." "Not here. Not now. Don't do this to me, Tim. The father exhales sharply, pressing 2 fingers to his temple. 3 hours. That's all he's asking for. 3 quiet, uneventful hours from Perth to Adelaide. No screaming kids, no feet kicking his chair, no running up and down the aisles. More specifically, could the one causing havoc please not be his own? Timothy crosses his arms, sulking. Flying is boring. Why couldn't they go somewhere fun, like Hollywood or Africa? Why did it always have to be Adelaide? Grandma would pinch his cheeks, and Dad would sit around drinking port with Grandpa. Their house smelled funny, and now he couldn't even test how far he could jump on an airplane. He shifts in his seat, eyes scanning the rows of passengers ahead. The seatbelt light is off. Maybe if he's quick, the father sighs, pinching the bridge of his nose. Timothy, I swear to God. He turns to his son's seat. It's empty. A second passes. Another. The father blinks. The air feels suddenly thick. He turns his head slightly, expecting to see Timothy crouching in the aisle, giggling. Nothing. His gaze darts to the seats ahead, searching for the flash of a child's movement. His pulse quickens. Tim, no response. The father unbuckles his seatbelt, scanning the cabin. Timothy isn't anywhere in sight. He grips the armrest, forcing a breath through clenched teeth. It's fine. It's a game. He stands up. Timothy, a few heads turn. A flight attendant passing by pauses. Sir, my son, he says quickly. He's not in his seat. She glances at the empty spot beside him. Perhaps he went to the restroom? No, he wouldn't. Not without saying something. Not without whining about having to go. The father moves toward the nearest lavatory, knocking hard. Timothy? No answer. He presses the button. The door pops open. Empty. A cold knot forms in his stomach. He checks the other lavatory. Then the one at the front. Then the one at the back. Nothing. His pace quickens. His breath turns shallow. He pulls open the overhead lockers, searching for... what? A hiding child? He doesn't know. He just knows Timothy isn't in his seat. Timothy isn't anywhere. He weaves through the rows, scanning every face, stopping at every child. No. 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 The flight attendant approaches again, concern in her eyes. Sir, my son, he says, more forcefully now. He's missing. A ripple of murmurs spreads through the cabin. Another attendant joins the first. One of them touches his arm lightly. We'll help you look. Passengers glance up, some confused, others disinterested. A man 2 rows back frowns and mutters, I didn't see a kid sitting there. The father's head jerks toward him. What? The man shrugs. I mean, I just don't remember seeing a kid. Thought you were alone." The father stares. His vision narrows. His heartbeat pounds against his skull. "What the fuck are you trying to do? Did you have something to do with this?" The man drops his head, regretting getting himself involved. "Sir," one of the attendants says, "please stay calm. Let's retrace everything. Your son was in his seat after takeoff?" "Yes." "And when did you last see him?" "Just now. Seconds ago." His voice is shaking. He doesn't care. "I was talking to him. I turned away for 1 second, and he swallows. He's gone." More passengers are watching now. Some look concerned. Some exchange glances. The father scans every face, searching for suspicion, guilt, anything. His breathing grows uneven. This isn't happening. Someone took him. Someone on this plane has his son. The attendants begin a quiet, methodical search. One asks passengers if they've seen a small boy. Most shake their heads. Some barely look up from their screens. The father doesn't wait. He moves faster, yanking back curtains, peering into crew areas, shoving open every unlocked door. The attendants murmur into radios. The plane feels smaller now, tighter. He searches again and again. Every seat, every row, every corner, nothing. His hands shake. His face is burning. He moves up the aisle, scanning the faces again. Who took him? A woman reaches out gently. "Sir, please." "Timothy!" the father shouts, voice cracking. Heads snap toward him. "Timothy, answer me!" Nothing. His pulse pounds in his ears. He stumbles down the aisle, knocking against armrests. "Tim." His voice is raw now, desperate. "Timothy, where are you?" He reaches the cockpit door, slams his fist against it. "My son is missing! Someone has my son!" The attendants pull him back, whispering reassurances that mean nothing. He shoves past them, back down the aisle. He checks the bathrooms again. He knows he already did. He does it anyway. He pulls down tray tables, looks under seats. Passengers murmur. Some watch with unease. Others look away. The man who said Timothy wasn't there stares at him blankly. The father stares back, fists clenching. He opens his mouth. But what does he say? That the man is lying? That his son was here, right here, and now he isn't? That his world is collapsing, and no one understands? "Sir?" an attendant says softly. "Please, sit down." The father sways on his feet. His head is pounding. Then, a shift. A sensation. The slight pressure in his gut. They are descending. No, the plane is landing. His breaths turn shallow. He turns toward the window. The ground grows closer. No, no, no. He grips the seat in front of him. His knuckles go white. Timothy is still missing. The wheels touch the runway. The plane slows. The overhead chime dings. Timothy is still missing. The seat belts click open. People stand. Timothy is still missing. The doors open. Light floods in. Timothy is still missing. The other passengers are standing now. The overhead lockers are popping open. Timothy is still missing. They have their bags and pushing past him. Exiting the plane, Timothy is still missing. He is the last one now. Sir, we need you to please exit the aircraft. The authorities have been alerted and are waiting to assist you in the terminal. Timothy is still missing. Where is my son? The quiet before. I bent low over the painting, the tip of my brush dotting at the corner of the landscape. It was just a tree, after all. But the spot of varnish that had welled up and discolored over the years needed to be removed. When the acetone leached into the surface, it peeled back, and my heart clenched. As the varnish removed a layer of paint, it revealed a subtle, dark patch of pigment beneath its surface. I sat back, a chill running through me. Underpainting. Maybe a hidden painting? I held my breath and stripped off my rubber gloves as I leaned back from the canvas. The visible image was a simple landscape, rolling hills and a few meandering roads, the colors muted by age and dust. The sky was a washed-out blue, and the trees on the horizon seemed too far off to be of much importance. It was nothing special, but that was never the point. What mattered now was finding out what lay beneath. I put on fresh gloves and lifted the painting with care. The canvas felt heavier than it should have, and I walked slowly over to the imaging lab. I positioned it carefully on the table, making sure that it was level, before placing the X-ray scanner above the canvas. The machine hummed to life, and I stepped back to the desk as the images slowly appeared on the screen. Beneath the visible landscape, buried under layers of thick, muddled paint, was a face. It was likely a woman, as I could see brushstrokes of long hair curling around her face beneath the layers. The image was ghostly, faint, and slightly blurred, but unmistakable. A portrait. The faint outline of her features, her eyes staring somewhere just beyond the frame, sent a shiver through me. She was there, just beneath the surface. I didn't need to look at the X-ray again. I'd seen enough. I grabbed my phone and quickly searched for the artist's name. It was barely anything, just some obscure mentions in art journals, but something about it felt wrong. There had to be more. I spent the next few days buried in the archives. The museum had extensive access to resources on all sorts of artists, but the painting's creator remained elusive. There was nothing concrete about him, just scraps of details on a man who seemed as obscure in life as he was in death. The painting, this painting, felt like a living thing, pulling me deeper into its mystery, one layer at a time. The more I uncovered, the more I realized how much there was to discover. As I attempted to track down her creator, I peeled back the landscape layer by layer, revealing the portrait of a strange, haunting woman. Her pale face was framed by dark, flowing hair that reached her shoulders. Her gaze was distinct, distant, yet her features soft, as though she's looking at something or someone beyond my reach. There was a haunting grace, a quiet calm to her, but an unsettling depth in her eyes. The light in the portrait was soft and diffused, casting a faint glow on her skin and creating gentle shadows under her cheekbones, giving her face an almost ethereal quality. She sat as though she is regal, with a slender curve to her neck, though her pose was rigid and upright. Her gown looked heavy and richly textured and almost blurred into the darker background. I found myself losing time, focus, and all sense of responsibility to this woman. Time had started to slip away in ways I couldn't explain. Days melted into one another, the world around me a blur as I spent more time with her. But no matter how much I uncovered, there was always a feeling that I was just scratching the surface. I pulled the stack of archived files towards me and sighed, taking another sip of the peach energy drink I'd come to rely on during these long stints of hunting down the elusive painter of the hidden woman. I'd discovered his name was Luigi Diovina. But beyond that, there were mere snippets of his life. An article about his madness toward the end of his life, and a lost last painting commissioned for a baroness. That article had sent a shiver up my spine. Could this be that painting? If so, I'd found a hidden treasure, but the baroness remained unnamed, leaving me with no way to verify who she was. I leaned back in the chair, my eyes falling once more on the image of the woman. I hadn't been able to stop thinking about her. I wasn't the only one noticing the strain. Clara, Jenna, a senior restorer, pulled me aside. You've got to get back to the other works. The other paintings are falling behind. Victor has been asking about the St. Catherine piece. The museum's losing patience. I nodded, though I couldn't shake my growing unease. I'll catch up, I murmured, but even I didn't believe it. I couldn't focus on anything else. The painting, the Baroness had started to call her, had started to become the only thing I could focus on. Even when I tried, I found myself returning to the painting, as if it were calling to me. The woman's eyes seemed to follow me wherever I went. The deeper I investigated her, the more she began to consume my thoughts, my every waking moment. The article had come from a dusty file in the back of the local library, one that had been buried on microfiche and stuffed away in a back room somewhere. I'd had to bribe the front desk worker with a box of donuts and a large coffee, so she'd dig it out for me. But once I'd scrolled through 3 years' worth of articles on local auctions, I finally struck pay dirt. Haunted painting sells at auction. Deadly Baroness's portrait said to haunt Diavina's last known work, the headline read, giving much more detail than any other piece ever had. Though the Baroness was still unnamed, the full article mentioned the painter's dying days. Diavina's obsession with his final portrait left him a shadow of the man he once was. Those who knew him said he would often stand in front of the canvas, seemingly lost to time, as though the woman's eyes spoke to him. In his last weeks, it was rumored he painted over the face of the woman. This had to be the painting, but how had it ended up in our archives? Why had he painted over her face? The deeper I uncovered the painting, the more I believed that the woman, her secrets, were pulling me into a vortex of obsession, just as they had Diavina, Clara. My head jerked up, the soft brush in my hand. The Baroness's eyes were inches from mine, her creamy skin slowly being cleaned at my skillful hands. I blinked and sat back, gazing around the room for the source of my name. But no one was around. The office was strangely empty. I stretched my back, leaning slightly over the chair, and stood up to walk down the hall. Empty. And it was dark. Curious, I walked a few steps towards the archives room. "Clara!" I whipped around. No one was there, but the voice had come from my office. I rushed back in, but found only the Baroness staring at me. Why were her eyes fixed on me? Her gaze had moved. Her eyes seemed to be fixed on me, just as obsessed with me as I was with her. As I stepped around the stacks of files, my tools, and other paintings I'd neglected in favor of the Baroness, her eyes followed me around the room. I slowly sat down on the stool I'd left in front of her, sitting eye to eye with her. It was only us in the room, no one else. The next day, I gazed around Vincent's office as he sat in front of me. His arms were crossed over his chest, and the furrow in his brow only deepened as he watched me fidgeting. "Clara," he said, catching my attention. I glanced up quickly, my eyes locking on his face. "I understand that you're passionate about the restoration, but we're running a museum, not a one-woman project. You've been neglecting the other pieces for weeks now. You know how important the St. Catherine piece is. If it isn't ready by the next exhibition, I'll get to it," I said, cutting him off. I blinked rapidly. The St. Catherine piece was complex, but it was just a cleaning job, and since I didn't need to paint anything, I'd be able to finish it quickly. "Clara?" My eyes widened as the familiar, haunting voice called my name. Do you realize how much time you've spent on this? Vincent paused, his eyes narrowing as he searched for the right words. This obsession? Don't ignore me. I closed my eyes and pressed my fingers to my forehead. I forced myself to meet his gaze. I'll get it done. I just need a little more time. Vincent let out a frustrated sigh, his hands running through his hair. I need you to refocus. We can't afford this. Not with the exhibit coming up. Clara! My head snapped up, but it was just me and Vincent in the room. I glanced down, my heart pounding. His hands were strained, the same rusty red as the Baroness's dress, the splotches covering his fingers and seeping into his nail beds. Clara, Vincent said sternly, though his voice was also tinged with worry. You're letting everything else slip. He flicked through his computer and turned it to me, his stained fingers showing CCTV footage of the archives. And, is that me? I asked, gazing at the screen. Yes. You stood there for an hour like that, Clara. And this is at... His voice trailed off as he checked the timestamp. His face grew increasingly lined with worry. The point is, you haven't been yourself. You look like you haven't slept in days, Clara. This isn't you. Go home. Get some rest, he said, sighing as he adjusted the screen back to normal. I stood, and without hesitating, I left his office. And don't do anything with that painting, he called as I stalked out. But it was calling me. She was calling me. I glanced into the studio from the sliver of a window in the door. Through the frosted glass, I could see a distorted view of the painting sitting on an easel at my workstation. I could see her outline, the delicate slope of her neck, and the blood red of her robes. Suddenly, a shadowy figure moved across the threshold of my door, and I jumped back, startled. I hesitated, struck by fear. Not that someone had broken into my office, but that someone was going to take the Baroness from me. I turned the doorknob, but of course, I'd locked it, and I could see her right there. She was right there. A chill swept through me, and I shivered, closing my eyes as I dropped my hand from the door. When I got home, I was a little shocked to see Ethan on the couch, anxiously texting people. "You're home?" I said, dropping my keys and messenger bag by the door and taking off my coat. He gazed up at me and tilted his head. "You're home," he said worriedly. There was no warmth to his voice, as if he was put out with me. I furrowed my brow. "Yeah, Vincent sent me home early, said I looked tired." "What, early?" "It's 9 p.m., Clara," Ethan said, putting his phone down. I blinked and looked out the window, my stomach clenching. He stood up, moving over to me as he noted the look of confusion on my face. "What's going on, Clara?" he asked quietly. He reached out to rest his hand on the small of my back, but I pulled away, a feeling of overwhelming anxiety rolling through me. Nothing. I can't. I shook my head and then glanced up at him. I can't remember what I did. Vincent sent me home at 11? I said, my stomach twisting again. I leaned into the kitchen counter, holding it tightly. Ethan looked shocked, his lips parting to calculate the math. Okay, it's fine. We'll figure it out. You've just been stressed with the exhibition coming up, and all the work, he said, rubbing my back gently. I shook my head, reaching for my bag and rifling through it. My fingers crossed over something cold and metallic. I furrowed my brow and pulled out the ring of archive keys. It jingled in my hand, and I closed my eyes, shaking my head. Why do you... Ethan began, but I cut him off. I must have just shoved them in my bag. It's fine, I said, taking a deep breath. I put the keys gently back into my bag and took out my phone again, checking the time. It's late. I'm late. I came home late. I'm just tired, I said slowly, rationalizing things to myself. Okay, do you want to just call it a night? Get some rest? Maybe a shower? Ethan asked. I saw his nose crinkle from the corner of my eye. Did I stink? My jaw twitched as I bit my cheek. Yeah? I nodded, but couldn't help the feeling that Diavina's barrenness had something to do with the loss of time. I closed my eyes, and Ethan brushed my hair back from my face. Okay, I said, pulling away from him. He looked sad, but didn't move towards me as I stalked off to our bedroom, my phone held loosely in my fist. I stepped into the hallway leading to our bedroom, the light from the kitchen spilling across the dark-toned wood behind me. As I stepped towards the darkened bedroom, I felt a drift, and my head felt heavy. I stopped at the doorway and lifted my head. My fingers paused on the light switch. The room glowed with the dull orange light from the street lamp that streamed through the curtains. It made for an eerie sort of atmosphere. But that's not why I paused. My eyes were locked on the full-length mirror across the room from me. Its glassy surface should reflect only the bed, maybe the edge of my body, not the full shadow that stood ominously facing me. I blinked, frozen in place as I stared at the shadow. It almost pulsated, its shoulders hunched. It wasn't exactly shapeless, but it didn't have any defining features. Still, it felt familiar in a way it shouldn't have been. My fingers twitched, brushing the edge of the light switch. I took a shaky breath. I flipped the switch, and the figure was gone as soon as light flooded the room. The mirror was empty. My chest clenched painfully, and I leaned against the door frame, Slowly, I flicked the light again. There she was, dominating the mirror, a black mass. But I knew her. I knew who she was. I flicked the light on again, and she was gone. But just as quickly, I flicked it off, and she was there. Panic rose like a bile in my throat. Distantly, as if underwater, I could hear Ethan calling to me, but his words were lost. Because the Baroness was calling me, her voice was rising in a screaming ring in my ears. I trembled with fear as I stepped towards the mirror, towards her. My mind fought my body as deep, panicky breaths burst from my chest. As I stepped up to the mirror, the shadow swelled and blossomed, the shrill screams rising to fever pitch in my ears. A hand wrapped around my shoulder just as the mirror shattered. It's with great pleasure that we present the final restored work of Luciano Diovina, the Baroness. Its beauty belies its tragic past, and we are proud to display it as a memorial to our departed co-worker. Vincent held the champagne glass aloft, then took a sip and stepped down from the podium. Beside him, the Baroness had been artfully restored, her colors vibrant, her skin creamy, her robes deep and gory slash of blood red. She looked almost youthful, brought back to life at Clara's skilled hands. It's a shame. An older woman stands next to a younger one, both eyeing the Baroness and the in memoriam plaque that had been hung next to her frame. The younger one nods, glancing nervously at the portrait. It's tragic. But did you hear about what happened with her boyfriend? I mean, the portrait, sure, it's gorgeous, but I heard it was bad. They glance at the painting. Like gruesome. Like she was obsessed? They cut off, clearly unsure how much to say. The older co-worker's voice drops even lower. Obsessed doesn't even cover it. But you didn't hear it from me. It's a horrible end, though. They each sip their champagne, the younger one shivering as if she said too much. The older glances down at her watch. Come on. The presentation. We're late. It's only the beginning of trouble. As I sit on the uncomfortable train seat, blankly staring out of the window, I feel the heat wash over me in an instant. Breath 1, breath 2, breath 3. It's okay. I can do this. Trying to stay calm and relaxed, I look away from the window, starting to feel dizzy from the speed we pass the trees with. You've done this before, I say to myself as a pep talk. Just because it's different setting doesn't mean you can't do it. There is only one problem. If it goes south, I won't be able to escape for another 3 hours of that train ride. I have to execute the plan perfectly to the last step to make sure I will get away with it. In moments like this, I swear at myself for choosing to do that specific line of work. I'm still a beginner. I am still nervous and anxious about the jobs, even though my mentor tries to convince me it will get easier and more natural. I let out a huff and smile at that thought. What a messed up world it is to get used to doing something so awful. I personally don't have a choice. I need to do this and clear the society from disgusting and horrible people. My eyes travel down to my backpack, trembling slightly from the train movements, filled with the tools I will need for this specific job. The top zip is open, and the sun faintly glints in body of the syringe I brought, the tool for Plan A. If all goes well, I won't have to travel too far down the alphabet to finish the job. But I prepared myself for many possibilities and outcomes. I push my head back onto the headrest and close my eyes, breathing in the dusty smell of the carriage. A quiet conversation of the couple 2 rows ahead of me reaches my ears, and I focus on their words to calm my nerves. It's hard to tell what the topic of their exchange is. All I can make out from it are words like secret, promise, disaster, and truth. The nosy part of me wants to move closer and listen in, but the rational part of me rejects the idea, bringing my focus back to my assignment. I should not distract myself with anything until the job is done and I can get off the train. My phone buzzes in my pocket, and I take it out to see my mentor's name on the screen. Yes, I answer quietly, looking around for any other passengers that could be in the earshot. What's the update? His low and raspy voice sounds in my ear, and a shiver travels down my spine. I will approach the target in 8 minutes, I reply, and saying it out loud must activate some more anxiety in me, because my leg starts bouncing and fingers start fidgeting with the seam of my jeans. Keep me in the loop, he says, and hangs up. I take one last deep breath and stand up, grabbing my backpack and closing the zip. Here we go. Slowly, I make my way towards the front carriage. The first class one I don't have a ticket for. You have to be confident when walking past, but not too confident. It brings attention. Easy. I enter the carriage and quickly scan the faces I can see for my target. I notice him at the table the furthest away from me, so deeply interested in whatever he is typing on the laptop that I can sense it will be easy to execute my plan A. He has got gray hair with some black streaks still running through. The suit he is wearing looks expensive, perfectly tailored to his broad shoulders, but slim figure. He has got a clean shave, but the eyebrows he is furrowing are thick and badly unshaped. Luckily, he looks exactly like the picture I was given. The fact that he has a laptop on the table and a drink next to it is a slight inconvenience. I wouldn't want to damage his laptop in the first part of the process, as he may not be as forgiving for me to move to the second stage of the plan. My movements have to be even more careful now. I cannot afford to make a mistake here. I shuffle my backpack and tilt it to the right side, which is where the tables are. As I slowly make my way towards the end of the carriage, I intensely calculate the angle I have to use to not cause too much trouble. My target's laptop is by the window side of the table, as is he, still furiously typing on the keyboard. His wine glass is placed to his right, almost at the edge of the table, which means my best move is to knock it away from him and his laptop. I swallow hard, take another deep breath, and head to the door that lead to the next carriage. As I am about to open it, I turn to my right and push his glass off the table. Oh my goodness, I am so incredibly sorry, sir, I say nervously, trying to keep my voice slightly higher pitched than my natural one. And I take some tissues out of the side pocket of my backpack. He swears and closes his laptop. How the hell can you be so clumsy? He's angry. I can hear it in his voice. It must have been a nice glass of wine. But then he looks at me, the low cleavage of my blouse, the long and wavy brown hair barely covering anything, and he smiles. The frustration from his face is gone. Sir, please, I will buy you a new drink, I promise. I mumble, still pretending to be stressed over this situation. Ah, darling, please don't worry. It's just a liquid. When I'm done wiping off the seat opposite him, I throw the tissues in the bin and head for the bar, leaving my backpack innocently on the seat by the window. As I walk away, I make sure to swing my hips with the movement to attract more of his attention. With the wine replacement in my hand, I walk back to the table and smile innocently at my target. He smiles back at me, probably thinking he got lucky I came across him. I know what he does when no one is looking, to what atrocities he lowers himself when he is not pretending to be a highly respected businessman. And I also know that my silly outfit and clumsiness made him incredibly happy. Wipe this smile off your face, you monster. You have no idea what's coming. I sit on the bench I just wiped off and push my backpack under the table, right by my legs. My name is Cassie, I say, and gently bat my eyelashes at him. I hope I didn't spill any wine on your gorgeous suit or very expensive-looking laptop. I chuckle nervously, waiting for his reaction. Well, Cassie, I think you just got lucky. Nothing seems to be damaged. I look at the table behind the laptop. Actually, there may be a little left here. Please, let me... I lean to my backpack under the pretense to get the tissues, and with them, I take out the syringe and place it on my lap. After wiping the invisible stain off the table, I smile at my target again. Thank you for being so understanding. Of course. Before he says anything else, I stab his thigh with my unassuming weapon, and his eyes open wide. "What did you just do?" "Shh," I say in my normal voice, and watch him slowly drift away. "Have a nap, sir." Rambling Rose. "I'm late!" Life always passes over me. "I'm late" is just another phrase for situation normal. Absolutely fluffed up. "Did you put in your application, Rosie?" An unnecessary question, probably motivated by a sense of duty. I give my usual frown and grimace, a sigh, an "I don't care, but will try to appear concerned" look. The office crew is sniffing each other out. They're silently musing on the expected unfairness, their anticipated realization of failure, judging nepotism or brown-nosing from each participant. Jones, from service and repair, has been studying his policies. Gretel has finished her Certificate 4 in admin. Will is confident and also disgruntled because he has been at the WAM desk for 3 years and feels he deserves the promotion. Georgia has made coffee for the PA to the director every day for the last 2 months, and today has homemade chocolate brownies. The bright young things wander confidently, secretive, holding clipboards, adjusting their ties and hair clips. It's a yearly raise of $20K, and not to be ignored. But I most studiously ignored it. The primitive yearning for some freedom has snared its unrealistic teeth right into my IT life. Hell, I don't even know what the word means. I haven't read Jack Kerouac, but sense that this might be one of life's moments when Kerouac isn't just a writer. Kerouac is where I want to be. Pens, wads of reports, tea bags, coffee bags, a banana already populated with several tiny Drosophilas, laptop charger, some screwed up piece of something, possibly a chocolate wrapper. Everything into the locker. Close the door tightly before anything falls out. There may be war once the position is filled. It's a late winter, but June in the Highlands is starkly beautiful, misty, haunting even. The trains have all left, and I park my red Subaru into a free parking lot. The sky is an empty gray slate, and the new moon barely lights the smooth concrete platform. I walk carefully to the graveled exit, look into the darkness, and start walking beside highway number 1. Nobody would know if I am man or woman, as my hair is tucked into a black beanie. Nobody will try to stop for me, and I swagger, trying to look dangerous and unwelcome. My wind jacket is old and barely covers my hips. My tracky Dax, gray, also old. Just another vagabond itinerant wandering the roads. I step purposefully, too quickly, and slow myself. The journey, not the destination, I say. The crunch of the gravel beneath my rubber-soled gym shoes is satisfying. Each step releases its perfume of rain, oil, and petrol. I breathe its nourishment like a 4-year-old who has escaped from the front yard onto the street for the first time. A dog howls and then barks, and the cars gradually dissipate. At some point, I realize I am alone, even from any flow of traffic. It is 11 p.m. I have been walking for 3 hours. I breathe even more deeply. The air has chilled. A faint silhouette of bushland lines the horizon, and a small window twinkles somewhere on a hillside. As I walk, this small, friendly light disappears behind a ridge. A kookaburra announces something. It's time we all just went to sleep now. I will keep walking. I will keep walking until I want to stop. More hours pass by as I contemplate the stiffness in my calves, the ache in my arches, and the spots where my jacket does not cover my legs properly. The sky has started to reveal stars, hundreds of different sized lights, satellites drifting through them. Betelgeuse and Sirius, Pleiades, Orion's belt, familiar sky landmarks that are warm to the touch. Homey reminders that I am not completely out of my mind. Excitement suddenly makes me look up and revel in the starry expanse. Some loose barbed wire behind a ditch at the side of the road looks promising, and I duck through it. I am starting to feel tired. An irrigation ditch with straight sides has been carved into the bare landscape, its straight sides starkly incongruent with the rocky outcrops and overgrazed land. A breeze has started up, and snow must have fallen in the mountains as the wind is cold. I lie carefully in the ditch, careful not to wet my shoes, marveling at the convenience of a raised bed, however hard. Staring into the skies, I think, this is where I should have an epiphany. But what will it be? I am a traveler, a nomad, a gypsy on the road. This is where enlightenment and realization comes from. The cold is biting deep, and I cover spots alternatively when the pain gets too much. First my knees, then my torso, but never everything all at once. Looking imploringly into the stars, I let all sense of self leave me, my mind floating into that vast canopy. The cold makes me feel a bit sorry for myself, and I feel not just alone, but lonely. I think I slept, my icy dreams interspersed with awkward rearranging of the useless wind jacket. The romance of my zero-gravity bed, just a cold, hard slant with pointy pebbles pressing into my back and hips, a crackle of nearby dried grass, the swoosh of saltbush being brushed past, a movement so close that I lose my breath in terror. I jolted awake. Was this near where those hitchhikers had disappeared? What if there was a man with a hatchet studying me, waiting for me A gun? An intent to harm me? My heart was in my ears, and I breathed noiselessly, trying to stop breathing so fast. I sink into the hard clay. Just another boulder. Nobody here. After a half hour of immobile silence, it seemed that the killer would have moved by now. But I slowly lifted my chin to survey what was behind me, above the ditch, expecting any moment my life could be taken from me. A snort in my ear, and a scuffle from all around where my head lay. A dozen sheep were startled from where they had been staring at me. They stood back, gazing at the intruder, and slowly backed off. I was safe. The sheep were my friends, my protectors. They trotted away quickly now that it was obvious what this warm, soft-bodied thing was. I stayed the next 2 days in a rented room, happily proud of the adventure. I even called Jones and congratulated him on his new interest in company policy. Surely this point will be noted by management as a sign he is a contender in the offing. We agreed that it was a done deal. Georgia's coffee making was obsequiously good, and she was probably sleeping with the director anyway. I comforted Gretel and said she was far prettier than Georgia and had ethics, which Georgia patently did not. I put my hand on Will's shoulder and smiled. He'd get there soon, and was deserving. I might even explain my journey to Jones one day, but thought the better of it. I don't think he would understand. I barely could make sense of it myself. The seeds of dominion. 1. I always knew the world was constructed on lies. Not minor falsehoods or innocent misunderstandings, but carefully cultivated fabrications designed to shape reality. From my earliest memories, even before my parents disappeared, I sensed that truth was not something freely given. It was deliberately hidden, erased, and rewritten. My parents were among the first to resist. They stood against the dominion when resistance still felt possible, believing knowledge was a right worth risking everything to protect. They vanished when I was 6, quietly removed by the regime, their identities reduced to whispers and fading memories. Ronan and Elise Marek, old friends of my parents and former resistance fighters themselves, took me in. They taught me how to navigate the unseen currents beneath the surface, how to decode the hidden language of control, the dominion embedded in every broadcast and headline. They showed me the creeping corporate feudalism that had slowly replaced democracy as powerful corporations silently took ownership of entire districts, deciding who prospered and who disappeared. By 16, I was adept at uncovering secrets. I immersed myself in encrypted data streams and forgotten archives. Ronan and Elise warned me. Knowing too much was dangerous, but ignorance was deadly. The Dominion thrived because people feared the truth. They accepted convenience over freedom. My decision to become a journalist was calculated. It allowed me to move unnoticed, to gather information without drawing suspicion. Yet, deep down, I knew this was more than a career. It was a weapon against tyranny. Truth was powerful, but proof was lethal, too. You ever feel like you're chasing ghosts, Joran? I glanced up from my tablet, where Dominion data feeds ran endlessly, searching for cracks in their carefully constructed narratives. Devin Rains, my closest friend since our academy days, watched me from across the cafe table, worry shadowing his face. We chase ghosts because they're the only thing the Dominion fears, I replied evenly. Devin's discomfort was palpable, a subtle anxiety coloring every gesture. Recently, he'd changed. He'd grown cautious, hesitant. The war's been over for years, Devin said softly. Maybe they won because no one noticed until it was too late. Now, all we're doing is marking ourselves as targets. His words unsettled me, not for their truth, but because they were spoken from fear. Devin's courage had once matched mine, his idealism unwavering. Something had shifted. What's changed, Devin? I leaned forward, lowering my voice instinctively. Surveillance was everywhere, hidden in plain sight. He hesitated, eyes flicking nervously to the security camera mounted near the ceiling. There's a new list, he whispered. It's not for criminals or dissidents. It's for people who question too much. It's called the inquiry list. I understood immediately. A blacklist was straightforward. Immediate punishment or exile. The inquiry list was something darker, insidious. It marked you for isolation, slow erosion, and eventual disappearance. You're on it, I stated flatly, watching him closely. He nodded slowly. We both are. A silent understanding passed between us. Devin was frightened, and fear made people dangerous. Still, I wasn't about to stop. Not now, when the stakes had finally become clear. 3. Devin disappeared within days. His presence simply ceased. No messages, no records, no traces. Just silence. I pursued answers with relentless determination, hacking into secured archives, whispering in underground circles, piecing together fragments of his fate. Each revelation deepened my dread. The Dominion protocol wasn't coming. It had arrived. Our world was now governed by rigid conformity, loyalty, measured in unquestioning obedience. Citizens weren't people. They were assets, evaluated for their utility, discarded when inconvenient. I stared numbly at the evidence on my tablet. Democracy hadn't merely been undermined, it had been methodically dismantled. Devin wasn't dead, not physically. He had been absorbed, transformed into something compliant and controlled. 4. I knew when they would come. Patterns were easy to spot if you paid attention. Increased drone patrols, subtle shifts in daily broadcasts, neighbors becoming suddenly distant. It was all carefully staged. When the knock finally came, I was already on the move. Out through the fire escape, down silent alleyways, navigating shadows with practiced ease. My heart pounded, but my breathing remained steady. Panic was a luxury I couldn't afford. The train station loomed ahead, my gateway to the industrial underground. Passengers waited silently, their faces blank, eyes fixed firmly forward. I slipped onto the platform just as Dominion enforcers emerged, their armored presence imposing and inevitable. Joran Vale, the voice sent a chill down my spine. Not the enforcer's voice, but Devon's. I turned slowly, dread twisting inside me. Devon stood among them, dressed in Dominion black, his eyes hollow and distant. I recognized the vacancy instantly. The Dominion had taken not only his freedom, but his spirit. "Come quietly," he intoned, emotionless. "You gave in," I accused bitterly. "They made you afraid, and you surrendered." "I adapted," he replied mechanically. "No," I said sharply. "Adaptation isn't compliance." His gaze faltered. Something brief and vulnerable flickering behind those empty eyes. Devon reached toward me, an automated reflex of the Dominion's control. The train doors hissed open beside me, a brief window of opportunity. Devon lunged, grabbing my shoulder. Instinct took over. I drove my elbow hard into his ribs, feeling him recoil sharply, gasping for breath. His grip loosened, and I wrenched free, leaping onto the train just as the doors snapped shut behind me. Through the window, Devon stared helplessly, now a shadow fading into the distance. Regret etched his features briefly before the darkness reclaimed him. The train surged forward, carrying me into uncertainty, but also toward freedom. 5. As the city lights blurred into a mosaic of neon and shadow, I steadied my breathing. The train hummed rhythmically beneath my feet, a steady reassurance that, for now, I was still free. Passengers around me stared blankly ahead, eyes purposely unfocused, trained to remain ignorant of anything that might threaten their carefully curated peace. But I was awake. The Dominion thrived on the apathy of the masses, believing control was absolute because compliance was easy. Yet beneath that facade lay a deep-seated fear of truth, a fragile illusion ready to shatter. I had lost Devon, just as I'd lost my parents. Each loss carved itself into my being. Painful reminders that truth always came at a cost. But their sacrifices were not in vain. They'd ignited a flame in me, nurtured by Ronan and Elise, a flame of resistance, a commitment to remember, to speak, and to expose the lies. The Dominion underestimated the strength of those who remembered, those who chose truth over comfort. They believed themselves untouchable, their rule eternal. But power built upon lies was fundamentally unstable, vulnerable to those willing to risk everything for the truth. As the train raced deeper into the industrial outskirts, darkness settled around me, punctuated only by flickering lights and distant shadows. I pressed my forehead gently against the cold window, eyes scanning the landscape rushing past. Factories loomed on the horizon, silent giants standing guard over secrets yet undiscovered. My heart steadied, determination hardening like tempered steel. They might hunt me, silence me, or erase my name from history, but they couldn't erase the truth, not while people like me still breathed. The Dominion hadn't won, not yet. On a parallel track, unnoticed, another train moved quietly through the shadows. Inside, illuminated by the pale glow of a screen, a figure stared intently at my image, captured by surveillance cameras. Eyes narrowed thoughtfully, studying every detail of my escape, every gesture, every defiance. From the tinted window of his train car, Devon watched the darkness unfold, shadows reflecting in his eyes no longer hollow, but haunted by the flicker of something forgotten. He whispered softly to himself, a truth long buried, but impossible to erase. The truth is not a ghost, it is a weapon. And outside, the city faded slowly into darkness. Columbine. Every night, the fog killed scores of us. The city of Metro needed a hero to protect them. And so I rose up and became the super-powered woman to save them all. I am Maverick, named for the city's most usually seen creature of flight. My civilian identity is Cora Neely. When I took up the mantle of the heroic Maverick, I left behind my former mundane life as a citizen to combat crime in all its insidious forms. I usually triumphed, earning the keys to the city. I met more than I expected when I encountered someone called Columbine. Columbine was my arch foe, a foe of extraordinary caliber, if one were afraid of clowns. She was a commedia dell'arte themed supervillain whose motive was to destroy the city of Metro, weaponizing lethal gas in the form of mist in our city every night that killed many inhabitants. Her motive was to eradicate Handcroft Laboratories, an organization responsible for medicine and chemicals vital to Metro's health and progress. One day, I discovered a formidable truth when we battled amid the towering skyscrapers of Metro. I was having a midnight flight when she arrived, indigo-haired with matching lipstick, taunting me with maniacal laughter. Up until this moment, I had yet to meet someone so unhinged and so glaringly dangerous. We would grow close in later years, but that night, the fight was for mutual detest as much as it was about survival. The birdie's a long way from her nest," she said in a sing-songy voice. Columbine's face was contorted into a grimacing leer behind her clown half-mask. "Metro is mine to protect," I told her. "I hail from the faraway citadel of Celestion, where we have no tolerance for common criminals such as yourself. I dare you to fly, to fight. Come and stop me," she said, firing bullets at me. My wings deflected her shots. I swooped into the air with metallic wings, shedding my trench coat. Once I reached her level, on the rooftop where she stood, I lurched forward, holding her by the neck. She pivoted, slashing at me with an intricate dagger. I dodged the blows, my wings slicing through the air. Columbine freed herself from my wrenching grasp, and we continued our battle, parrying back and forth in a vicious dance of death. She danced a vile ballet throughout the rooftops, acrobatically dodging all of the blades that I slung at her. She stepped forward and cradled my jaw, speaking in a hushed tone. "Look how you're all alone in life, waiting for even more recognition for gift-wrapped victories that you never deserved," she said. "Join me. This wretched city could be ours if you let it." I wrestled myself away, shaking my head at her attempt to seduce me into defeat with her carefully chosen words. Columbine knew my weakness and wasn't afraid to use it against me. "You're wicked scum," I spat out. "Then die alone," she said. Was it true that she was truly insane? "Eeny, meeny, miny, mo," she whispered, bellowing the last word while firing more bullets at me from a vintage hand rifle. I deflected again and surged towards her, slicing her neck with my razor-sharp wing. She coughed, stumbling downward to the street below, feeling something akin to pity that I could not name. I descended and caught her, and we plummeted to the street. Columbine clutched at my collar. I leaned closer. With a trembling hang, she removed her mask to reveal patterns of acid lesions trailing from her forehead to her right jaw. There's something that you should know about Handcroft Labs. They're not the city's saving grace. They held me captive since infancy and experimented on me. They took away the closest thing I had to a father figure, disfigured my face. I'm the villain I am because of Handcroft. Stay far away. I was stunned. The same place that was about to provide an antidote to Columbine's venomous fog was what twisted her into something possibly past saving. Was she right? Unable to shake her words from my head, I flew to the nearest hospital, dropped her at the door, and set out to investigate her claims for myself. Columbine's civilian identity was that of a theatrical drama teacher. One afternoon, I visited her at her school and pleaded with her to cease the toxic nightly mist. She relented with downcast eyes. "What are you really here for?" she asked. You I said softly. I want to make sure that you're all right after. Well, let's forget the homicidal pleasantries. I found out that you're right about Handcroft. Turns out that they're up to more harmful things than just university science projects. So, you believe me? Asked Columbine. We'll see, but it's a start, I said. Cora, listen to me. When this thing, she gestured to her mask, this Columbine thing takes over, I can't control. No worries, I said, trying to understand her in some way. This city I used to put on a spectacle, pits us against each other. It's outside both of our control. As time went on, we continued our game of fighting and alternately reconciling, with no conclusive winner every time. Sometimes I let her get away. Other times, she purposely ceased to slay me. She was right about Handcroft, so we joined forces to end their schemes forever. Having succeeded, we became more than hero and villain. We were connected by a common goal. Months later, we grew closer, me and Columbine. At one time, I woke up and got out of bed to find that she wasn't in my room anymore. There was a note. Dear Cora, I can't keep up this charade anymore. I have to go after an enemy of yours on my own. I'm sorry. Columbine, Claude, XOXO. I wept for hours at losing someone I had fought alongside to save our city. When my tears ceased to fall, there was one thing I knew for certain: that I would hunt Columbine down from every corner of the earth until I found her. My search would continue.